Power of agreement. Today we explore the power of agreement, not as a motivational idea, but as a metaphysical law of union, a spiritual principle rooted in the eternal nature of God. Agreement is not persuasion. Agreement is participation. It is the harmonizing of human consciousness with divine truth. Agreement is the moment when your inner yes resonates with what God has already spoken. It is the alignment of your awareness with eternal reality. When you agree with God, you are not trying to make something true. You are entering the truth that already is. Agreement starts with God, not with us. God's word is not a reaction to circumstances. It is an expression of his eternal nature. What God has stated is not a suggestion, not a possibility, not a negotiation. It is reality in its purest form. When you agree with God, you are stepping into his divine intention. This is why the psalmist declares, "Forever, O Lord, your word is settled in heaven." Agreement is the act of settling your consciousness into what God has already settled in himself. Agreement is union, not mental effort. It is not mental gymnastics. It is not trying to believe harder. It is not forcing yourself into positivity. Agreement is union awareness, the recognition that God's mind and your recreated mind share the same spirit. God's word and your identity are not separate. You are not trying to get God to move. You are moving with God. Agreement is the consciousness of oneness. This is why Jesus never prayed from separation. He prayed from union. I and the Father are one. Agreement is the echo of that oneness in your awareness. The three realms of agreement. Agreement operates in three dimensions. These are the three frequencies of agreement. 1, agreement with God's nature. You align with who God is: love, light, life, wholeness, wisdom. You cannot agree with God's word if you disagree with God's nature. 2, agreement with God's word. You align with what God has spoken, his declarations, promises, identity statements. 3, agreement with your identity. You align with who God says you are: image bearer, offspring, participant in divine nature. Agreement is the harmonizing of these three frequencies into one resonance. Agreement creates resonance. The symphony principle. The Greek word for agree in Matthew 18:19 is symphono, from which we get symphony. Agreement is resonance. When you agree with God, your thoughts resonate with divine thought. Your words resonate with divine speech. Your actions resonate with divine intention. This resonance amplifies spiritual power, not because God becomes stronger, but because your participation becomes clearer. Agreement is the tuning of your inner instrument to the frequency of divine truth. It unlocks manifestation. Agreement is the bridge between eternal truth and temporal expression. When you agree with God, you authorize divine intention to flow through your awareness. You remove internal contradiction. You silence the double mind. You become a conduit of what already is in God. Manifestation is not God breaking into the world. Manifestation is the world yielding to divine truth. Agreement is the womb of manifestation. Agreement is the engine of prayer. Prayer is not informing God. Prayer is not convincing God. Prayer is agreeing with God's mind. This is why Jesus says, when you pray, say, is teaching us to speak from alignment, not anxiety, from union, not separation, resonance, not desperation. Prayer becomes powerful when it becomes agreement. Agreement is the foundation of authority. Authority is not shouting. Authority is not volume. Authority is alignment. When your inner world agrees with God's truth, your words carry weight, your presence carries clarity, your actions carry divine backing. Authority flows from resonance with divine identity. Agreement is the atmosphere of miracles. Miracles flourish where agreement is present because agreement creates internal peace, spiritual coherence, unobstructed flow. Miracles are not God interrupting nature. They are nature responding to God. Agreement is the atmosphere where the supernatural becomes natural. Agreement in community, corporate resonance, when believers agree, not in opinion but in spirit, the collective consciousness becomes a symphony of divine resonance. This is why Pentecost required them to be in one accord. Agreement multiplies power because unity multiplies resonance. Agreement as daily practice. Agreement is not a moment, it is a lifestyle. It is the daily practice of returning to truth, aligning with identity, speaking from union, acting from oneness, resonating with divine intention. Agreement is participation in the divine flow. Closing exhortation. Agreement is not striving. Agreement is not effort. Agreement is not performance. Agreement is awareness. Agreement is resonance. Agreement is union. When you agree with what God has stated, you step into the rhythm of divine reality. You become a living echo of eternal truth. You become a participant in the flow of God's intention. Agreement is the power of becoming one with what God has already spoken.